Good evening. Welcome to this month's Town Administrators Report. With me is our Town Administrator, Steve Mayo. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, David. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Excellent.
We're actually feeling spring finally.
Yeah, a little crisp today, but I love it. It's fabulous.
A little late, but better late than never.
Absolutely.
So this is going to be, I promise you, the last program we talk about annual town meeting for this year.
For this year. Well, November we'll talk again, but that'll be the next. That's regular.
Yeah, that's far enough in the future.
Exactly.
But we're just going to do a recap because town meeting closed after only 3 sessions on Thursday evening last.
Didn't look that way after the first session. I was thinking 4, but no, we did it in 3. So yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, I don't mind being wrong because I had said 4, but we did it in 3. The thing that really amazed me was that we got through Article 1 as quickly as we did with as few issues as we did.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that we had, and going back, and I take notes at all the town meetings, so when I write my memoirs, I'll have them. They'll be all ready to go. But I thought what struck me overall about this town meeting is that there are a lot of new faces out there, which is great, and a lot of people asking questions and you know, and having input in the process. So I thought that was very good. In that regard, I thought it was a really good town meeting.
Well, in the first 2 sessions, we had somewhere around 250 voters participating, including some newbies at 18 years old.
Yes.
Some high school kids who are now old enough to be voters.
Excellent.
You know, which is always good to see. I unfortunately wasn't at the last session, but I understand that went down to the more normal 90.
Yeah, that was about around 100 people at that session.
Yeah,
and that had a little couple of testy moments there, but that's okay. That's what town meeting's all about.
and we'll get to those.
We'll get to those. Yeah.
But we did vote the budget.
Yes.
We did vote capital.
We did vote capital. And I think what's important on the capital, and I know we recap this, and you know, we have, and sometimes I think the numbers are so big that it gets lost a little bit. You know, we all realize the town council, DPW director, other department heads, myself, people on the capital planning committee that do a great job. I mean, we start with a number of around $9 million, things we would love to do. And then as we whittle down, there's a lot of things that get left on the cutting room floor that really break our hearts.
Sure.
But it's, you know, and it's unfortunate, and I really feel sadly about a lot of them. Number one is one of the last things to go was redoing Vets Fields courts and having a pickleball out there, which is the rage of the country. I'm going to figure out a way to bring that back, but that was one of the last things that was a personal thing to me that I really had liked. But we can't do everything.
Right.
So, you know, you get hit with a bad winter, we're going to have $600,000 of snow and ice we need to pay for. Things have to go, and budgets are about choices, and you know, do we get radios so the DPW can communicate better, or do we do a pickleball court? And that's what it comes down to. Right. So it's very little fluff there.
And sometimes the radios are more important because this is something we talked about in the emergency management group over a couple of years. The fire and police originally had some issues communicating with each other. That was resolved, and the one gap left was the DPW.
Right, and they're all together in these, you know, in these first respond type issues.
Right.
And so that needs to happen, and we do take steps to do it. So it is, I think the thing is, there's a lot of work to go into. There's a lot of meetings, there's a lot of discussion. These aren't made in a vacuum, and I think sometimes when the numbers are so large at town meeting, you know, you have a budget of $90+ million, you know, and it's hard for people to fathom what it is. So, but I do, a thank has to go to the capital planning committee, the town council, finance committee, school committee, these people that put in yeoman's hours. And then
And not only that, but everyone came very prepared.
I think so.
To explain the why. Not just here's the number, but here's the why of the number. so that voters at town meeting were able to understand
Right.
why we were adding so much money.
Yeah.
You know.
And you can agree or disagree. That's what
Right.
town meeting's about. But
Right.
Yeah.
And there was some of that too.
Absolutely.
You know. The other one that was long-winded, 2 3/4 hours, was Article 8, which we knew was going
would
to,
be.
you know, but it looks like finally the problems currently at the police station section of the public safety building are going to be addressed over the next
Yeah.
couple of years.
I agree. And I think that this was every now and then there's an article at town meeting where people's minds are changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the presentation and the discussion, I think a lot of minds were changed on that, where the margin was pretty big at town meeting. And I think that one of the items that really struck me was that I get it. You know, this building was redone 20 years ago or so.
Not even,
but roughly 20 years.
Right.
Yeah, I think around 92 was when the plans were done. So when it
Right.
got built was a little bit later. So it's been in the process for more than 20 years. But when you look at the police side of the building, that's still a 1950s block.
Right.
So I think that was what resonated, you know, and obviously the pictures and the issues that happened and what have you, and it wasn't designed well. I think that message got across.
Mm-hmm.
I think both chiefs did a great job in presenting it, and I think that I think that minds were changed. I think people that came in there that didn't quite understand it, didn't quite, you know, didn't like it. And believe me, no one likes spending $8 million. There isn't,
Right.
but it needs to be done. It needs to be done so we can, all these wonderful programs that we have, so they can be administered correctly, and that people coming to the police station can get the quick, efficient, private service
Right.
that they deserve. And I think that's what carried the day. And I think the other thing is that it's going to be handled within 2.5.
Right.
So there is no tax increase for this, per se. So I think that was a very interesting debate. I thought, as you listen to it, I think you could see the tide turning. I thought that probably there were 2/3 there anyway for it, but I think
Right.
the margin was much bigger. So I was
Very
happy.
much bigger. I thought it
happy
was
with
going to
that.
be within
Yeah.
10, 15 votes. You know, I had hoped it would
Right.
pass, but I thought either
Yeah.
way, it was going to be within 10, 15 votes. And from some of the debate, that's what it sounded like.
Right.
So the plurality that did show itself was very surprising.
Yeah, I thought it was very well presented, and I'm very pleased with it. And now we got to get to work on the next stage.
But, you know, it did bring up other issues that are out there festering, that will fester for another
Yeah.
few years because they aren't there yet with all the planning and all of the arrangements that have to be made, but the high school is still out there. There's still talk of the Greenwood School and what's going to be done, because that's almost a century and a quarter old now. Although it's still a phenomenally well-kept building.
Yeah, I think, frankly, the Greenwood School is so well built
Yeah.
and really works well. It's not as critical as
Right.
maybe you would think it'd be just based on its age.
Right, right. But, you know, the high school is going to have to be dealt with once we get the state to okay
Right.
it, you know, and how we go about that. We know that. There are some DPW
The
building
DPW
projects that are
barn
needed.
is,
Yeah.
is a big issue. That's
Yeah,
something that's very concerning. Maybe there are some collaborative possibilities that we can with some of our neighbors, and that we're
Right.
looking into that and really going down that. So,
because that hasn't been touched since it was built, what, 40 years ago?
oh yeah, yeah,
At
I'd
least.
say so. Yeah, a little bit of stuff we're doing around the edges, but no,
Yeah.
it needs to be done.
Yeah. So those things will come to pass, but yes, people are concerned about those, and they're thinking ahead, which is a good thing.
Yes. Oh yeah.
You know, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And there's also the possibility of the joint project with the vote for the hockey rink.
Right. That will not be a town-funded project, luckily. So it will go to town meeting to give permission. But that is, again, one of those things where you take a shot at. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take in hockey or basketball. So we'll see if that, it's a tough site, and we'll see, you know, the first round of requests, we had a bunch of interest, but nobody actually bid on doing the project. So we're going to have to sharpen our pencils and see what needs to be done there. So
there were 2 contracts that were indefinitely postponed.
Yes, yeah, those should be back in November.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So was that just a case of the negotiations haven't been
the timing
completed?
on negotiation. One of the unions did not have a attorney appointed by their group until basically after town meeting was started.
Okay.
And the other one, we've had a few meetings at, and need to get to a point where we can agree.
So we'll see those in
I hope so.
in November.
Yeah, that's my plan.
Another one that also was well debated was Article 11, which is the senior citizen exemption.
Yeah. That one I am very proud of that article. And I think that, you know, one thing that the town council has made a priority, and one thing that we've really talked about, and I think Wakefield is a little bit of a different type of community than others around us. Some communities around us, people leave after they're, you know, when their kids are of age, they leave. Wakefield is one where people stay. They want to stay at.
And it's long been that way.
And it's long, it has long been that way.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. But I think that, you know what, there are rising costs, and I get it. Healthcare is rising, water and sewer bills are rising, salaries are rising. It's just the housing is rising, taxes are rising. It's the way that the world is. And there are people that have really given a lot to this community. And I don't mean that they served in a board or anything like that, that just they're part of the whole fabric of the community and making us great. And they need a little bit of help. And they don't really want the help, but I think they do need a little bit of help. So the state does have a program, circuit breaker program, where if you fall into a certain income level, you can apply to the state, and they will actually give you, you know, a credit off of your taxes, state taxes, and essentially you could use that to pay for your local real estate taxes. So what we talked about doing, and I got to say that Victor Santinello did a great job with this, and you know, piloted it in Reading, and we will ask the state legislature for authority to do this. We may not get that until another year, but that's okay. I mean, it's coming. To say, hey, if you meet certain qualifications, you are 65 years or older, you've been in a property owner in Wakefield for 10 years, maybe not the same property, maybe you downsized, maybe you moved to a condo, but you have been part of this community for 10 years. And I think that was very important to the town council, that, you know, we didn't have an influx of people moving in to take advantage of this. We wanted to take care of our own, because that you can get up to the maximum income tax credit in the circuit breaker, which last year was $1,070, and that could come off your taxes. So when you think about people that maybe their tax bill is $4 grand a year, $5 grand a year, that's maybe knocking, and maybe they get something from the state already, knocking another $1,000 off is really going to help people maintain and stay in their homes. And what I really like about this program is that what we're saying as a community, and this was overwhelmingly passed, and I think almost unanimous, or unanimous, is that we're saying those of us who aren't 65 years of age yet, we're saying, you know what, we see the value of the social contract here, and guess what? This is going to be, whatever reduction here is spread among the rest of this rest of the residential class, which means that the Mayo family might pay another $25 or $30 a year on their taxes, a couple of bucks a month, $3 a month, in order to make this happen for someone to stay there, make it easier for someone who's given a lot to this community over the years to remain in their home. I think it's great. I think it's part of the social contract, because, you know, we're asking, the community as a whole asked these people to pay extra money in those taxes to build a new middle school. Where maybe they don't have any children in it. Now, maybe they have grandchildren in it, and And as you and I both know, we care a hell of a lot more about the grandchildren. But they've kind of already gone through that.
Right.
So I think it's part of that social contract. I think it's great. I frankly, although there was some discussion on this,
yeah,
I anticipated going into this article a little bit more pushback, and really didn't get much at all.
No, and I understand.
And I thought that was great.
I understand other taxpayers saying, wait a minute, why should I pay more? I understand that, especially in this day and age.
I do too.
You know, but, and there was a little bit of that, a lot less than I thought would happen. But I think also in general, I agree with you, people saw the value.
Right.
You know, we've seen a huge influx of Wakefield residents to Brooksby Village in the last 2 decades, and since they opened that property up. And, you know, keeping them here in Wakefield, whether it's in their homes or even maybe if they have to go to a Brightview, at least they're somewhere familiar that they're comfortable in. Yeah. They're not forced to move out of town because there just is no other option.
Yeah. I thought it was, I was really very proud of the community that the way that this article went. And because I was worried about some of that, there could be some vitriol, but there wasn't, and that really shows kind of a combination of all the efforts we're making with the Human Rights Commission and making Wakefield more welcoming, and not only more welcoming to people maybe moving in, but welcoming to the people that have been here and been part of the fabric. So I was thrilled with that. I really was very happy with how that went down.
It definitely did. Of course, the big thing on the last session was, and we've talked about this on the series several times over the years, and that was the passage of the rail trail.
Yes, yeah, that was unanimous. That was unanimous. I don't think there was one.
I don't remember a unanimous vote.
Yeah.
In at least since moving back from Rockport.
I know.
On anything.
I know. And you know what is interesting on that one is that, okay, it was unanimous, and in Linfield it passed, I believe, by 1 vote. So that maybe shows you a little bit of the differences between the two communities and how they view this project anyway. But this was really a leap of faith by the community in putting faith in town government, in the town council, because all we're at here is a 25 plan design, which means that, all right, it looks like it works on the track, looks like it works on the crossings, you know, the right-of-way seems to fit everything, but we really don't know how it's going to look. I mean, we know it's going to be 12 feet wide.
Yep.
We know that. We know there'll be 2 feet of grass on the side of it, or wood chips, or whatever it's going to be. But we don't know much else, because we can't even get to that point until the community makes that leap of faith, because Mass DOT, Mass Department of Transportation, will say, well, you know something, Wakefield, you don't seem all that interested in it. Why should we spend all this time with our engineers on putting this further? So, I mean, we have concepts, we know it's going to be this, we know it's going to be that. So the next step will be working with the newly revised Rail to Trail Committee, particularly Dot Halpin, who has been there since the beginning. And, you know, I remember her having her easel and her chart up at the Festival by the Lake, trying to get people interested in this project for 10 years. These things take a long time to get through, and it has. And now it has gotten through to the next step. So,
but the difficulty was also the fact that it required 2 communities to buy in, not just one.
That made it more difficult, but it also made it more exciting for the state, because they do have this combination now, and they're into this, you know, regionalization and collaboration, and that all kind of helps that out.
Right.
Now you have what, a 4-mile long rail instead of a line instead of 1.7, and it's going to cross through Reedy Meadow, which will be some of the more spectacular views in there.
Sure.
So I think it's going to be a really, really exciting project to go forward. We will have meetings with the abutters to go over some of those screenings, some of those, whether, you know, the trees, the fencing, crossings, parking, to make sure there isn't. We will actually have at least 3 designated parking areas along the way. So it's kind of one of those fun projects.
Oh, yeah.
And if you see these trails around the state, and I've, ridden bikes on a number of them, they are really almost immaculate. I mean, they are, you have bikers, you have family, pedal bikers, you have families, you have roller skaters. They're not trashing this. They're not,
Right.
It's really good family recreational fun. And if you've been to the ones down the Cape, you can go through, 3 or 4 towns, and it's fabulous.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a great, great item. I think I can see it helping kids walk to school more and what have you. So I look forward to the next step as we take the steps on those.
And there's not enough of that this day.
No, there isn't.
There's not enough walking to school.
Absolutely isn't.
In the time that we have left, I want to touch on annual town meeting, it seems, was for the bylaws
Yeah,
committee to bring their proposals,
Right.
and then in November we will see the charter.
exactly. And you may see more from the bylaw committee too.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Both are supposed to wrap up by November? Is that their,
Well, it's interesting. It's every 5 years, in years that end in a 3 and an 8, the bylaw committee is supposed to do a review of the bylaws. All right, so this being 2018, they've done that. Could they go into 2019 if they had? There's nothing against that. The charter is every 10 years, and the charter was adopted in 1998. So here we are, 2018. So that's going to be reviewed as well. So I think the charter will most likely wrap up in November. But hey, it could also bump into
Right.
spring of 19.
So how severe were some of these changes that were voted?
Well, I think on the bylaw committee, their first article, which was Article 21,
Yep.
really was more of a real cleanup article. Kind of changing the names of existing functions that were already being done and being called something differently, getting rid of commas or putting in commas where they're needed,
Right.
changing the wording a little bit.
So just kind of cleanup, maintenance.
Absolutely a cleanup or a maintenance.
Yeah.
And could have been cleaning up that was nothing less than or more than a typo years ago when that article was put in. So,
Well, I noticed some of the wording in 21 still refers to Board of Selectmen.
Well,
I
yeah.
assume they automatically just
they
change
do.
that to
Well,
town council.
because at the time that the warrant had to be published and printed,
Yep.
the election had not occurred yet, so it was still a Board of Selectmen. So
Right.
this did have to stay Board of Selectmen. The next book will say Town Council.
And I'm sure that automatically changes
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
Yeah. And then 22.
So there wasn't all that much discussion on item 21. I had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
22 also in its way was amending general provisions.
Yeah, and it also talked about a number of fees that maybe were updated to current capacities and what have you.
Yeah.
It talked about, it also got rid of a lot of fees. I mean, we don't have a cow weighing fee anymore and things like that. So those things were gone. It also...
So it was modernized.
It was modernized, yeah. It also really started the whole process of saying, you know what, when we have fines and we have people violating items, violating ordinances, local ordinances or local rules and regulations, that it should mean something. So having a fine of first offense of 100, second of 200, third of 300 actually has some teeth to it. Because we had fines that were like $5 a day, $20 a day. It's not going to, it's not a deterrent at all.
Right.
It also allowed for, in all cases, for non-criminal disposition, which means that we can get a lien and we can get some action from the district court on it. Much easier. And it's really not about the fees to us. It's about the behavior stopping or
Right.
being done correctly.
Right, right. 23 was kind of cleaning up boards, committees, and commissions.
Right, and that's where you had a little bit of the vitriol on it.
I heard.
Yeah, you missed that, I think, maybe.
I missed the... That's the sport sometime of
yeah, that was a little bit of sport. And I do think that, you know, the town councilor, Dombrowski, did a great job by not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, which I think was actually what he said up there, and he pulled out the offensive, amended that to pull out the item that was offensive to a lot of people. And what that was, and I have to say that the Permanent Building Committee, as constituted now, has done such a great job in their buildings, is that changing that probably wasn't in the best interest, I think, going forward.
Right.
And I think it was almost akin to going back to years ago when you had a building committee for this project, for that project, and you had really well-meaning people, but they had a passion for a particular project that they jumped into that maybe didn't lead to the best design and best development because they had some preconceived notions going in.
Sure.
This didn't. So that got a fair amount of play. What I thought that was interesting on that one that really didn't get talked about that much was that, and I thought it would be, is that there is going to be an expectation now that for these committees that they do get their minutes done and up on the website quickly, so that people can see the minutes of the meetings. And I think that's a great thing. I know the Board of Selectmen are up on the website. Board of Selectmen not even up on not only their minutes, but their meeting is streamed the next day,
right,
so people can see it. And that's a great job by WCAT, where we are here today.
Well, it's also shown live too,
and it's shown live,
yeah,
but also can be, you know, people can view it when they want just by clicking on the website at any time, town website. So that's really good.
And there was some discussion of this last night at the Human Rights Commission too. And do I understand correctly, and we may have started a trend here, I don't know, but a lot of the boards and commissions are now required to put together a policies and procedures document?
Well, I'm not so sure it's a policies and procedures document, but they not as...
Because that was kind of the first thing that the Human Rights Commission did when they were formed in late 2015.
I know, and that is probably something that's a little bit more onerous than we would expect the most committees to do. I think, but they do need to give an example of what the committee is about, what's the makeup and things like that, and what their purpose and mission is. So that's a little bit less than what the Home Human Rights Commission is undertaking.
It helps for the public understanding.
It does.
And you know, there was a discussion on, well, it was still the Board of Selectmen, then Town Council, that, you know, the Human Rights Commission got a lot of interest in the seats that were open, and yet they were having trouble just filling the seats on some of the other boards and commissions, and how they can go about doing that. And of course, one of the problems is the Human Rights Commission is very public. The others aren't. And that's a difficult balance to try and foster. But all in all, a lot got done.
A lot got done, and I think that people had great comments, and I encourage people to go to town meeting, come prepared.
Yep.
And there's many ways you can do that. You can certainly speak to any member of the town council, speak to me, speak to school committee members, superintendent, watch WCAT, because all of these issues have been vetted here pretty much ahead of time, and look on the website for information that we do have it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Steve, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month.